This is Michael Spedden, and welcome to Fowl Players Radio, your one-stop shop for all of your pop culture needs. We feature interviews from musicians, actors, comics, dancers, authors, and much, much more, up-and-coming artists and beloved favorites. We've got it all, people on stage, backstage, out front, and behind the scenes. Sit back and relax. Let's have some fun. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Fowl Players Radio, season number 11. We've got 11. I recently ran into Jason Mitchell of Psychoboy, a band that my old band had played with a number of times back in the old Baltimore, D.C. rock and roll scene in the late 80s and early 90s. Jason told me that he's re-releasing all of this Psychoboy material from between 89 and 93. So we talked about that. We reminisced about the clubs from those days, their move to Arizona, and much, much more. Links to their website and more are in the show notes. The Fowl Players of Perryville are back in action and have upcoming shows on the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, Fifth Company Brewing in Perryville, Susky River Beverage Company, and Maryland Party Boat. If you're interested in seeing a show, our website is www.fowlplayersofperryville.com. If you're interested in booking us, foulplayersperryville@yahoo.com or 443-600-0446. Every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern is the Back of the Rack, the Michael Spedden Show on 97underground.com, Baltimore's pure rock worldwide. We feature songs you forgot you liked, classics that never die, interviews with up-and-coming classic beloved bands. Go to 97underground.com and download the free app today and listen to us wherever you go. You can also find all of my interviews archived on YouTube at 97 Underground Michael Spedden. We thank you for watching and listening to Fowl Players Radio. Our main website is foulplayersradio.com. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/@foulplayersradio. Remember to support our guests in their endeavors. Links to their books, albums, tickets to their shows, and much, much more can be found in the show notes of every episode. We'll be back with Jason Mitchell right after these words.
Hey, you guys, this is Gina Shock, drummer of the Go-Go's.
Snowman here.
Hey, Mary Jo Peel here.
Hi, this is Kathy Ladman.
Hi, this is Jay Nedry from the Road Dogs.
This is A.D. Adams, and you are tuned in to Fowl Players Radio with your host, Michael Spedden.
And welcome again to this episode of Fowl Players Radio. Michael Spedden here. We are in season 11. We've got 11. It goes to 11. I'm not going to shut up about that either. I've been driving everybody nuts with that reference all season. And you know what? You're stuck with it for the rest of the year, folks. Today, we have Jason Mitchell. Jason and I knew each other about 30 back in 19 boobity bum, playing it, performing in Baltimore, in the Baltimore, D.C. area club scene. And, a lot of the same clubs, a lot of the same rooms, a lot of the same nights. And we kind of ran into each other by accident on Facebook, on the music pages and everything. So, Jason, welcome and great to see you again, buddy.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yep. So, we were just chatting a little bit before we started recording here. And I think one of the biggest memories that people have, especially playing in the Baltimore area, has got to be the Rage. Outside of Hammerjacks, yeah. I think it's got to be playing at the Rage. And
Absolutely.
I know that, my band was like we were like Norm at the Rage, we constantly.
Yeah, we played there a lot. We played there many, many, many times. Yeah. And I think the thing about that place that everybody loved was there wasn't a whole lot of politics about it. You could get in there. You could get booked there. It wasn't hard. I mean, It was much more difficult to get into the premier places like Hammerjacks. That was a rare thing. And, or at least for my group, we only played there a couple of times. But yeah, the Rage was pretty equal. Everybody could get in there, and if they liked you, you'd be there all the time.
Yeah,
I remember Steve, the owner, and Nancy at the door, and we played with a lot of our friends on the scene. We were friends with many bands, as I'm sure you were, and it was a real community back then.
It really, and something, I've said that quite a bit. it was kind of like a Friars Club atmosphere almost, if
A
that
lot of
makes sense.
laughing. Absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of laughing, a lot of encouragement. One thing that I remember, and I've had quite a few bands from back in those days on this show. I've run into them on Facebook. I've had, guys from, you remember Temper, Tainted
Yeah, I know.
Saints,
Yeah,
to
I know
name,
his name.
yep, to name a few of them. Talking about Mystic Force, God, they're all going to come to me here. I'm kind of on the spot, but what I wanted to say was that whenever one of us had an opportunity, it was kind of a rallying point for everybody to kind of get in your corner, sort of cheer you on,
Yeah, I think we all felt that, especially because Baltimore was not considered a premier market for music as far as
No.
getting signed or, being discovered any way you want to spin it. So having a group like Child's Play or Kicks or even Crack the Sky, who wasn't from Baltimore, but they made their name in that area. When I was a little kid growing up hearing that music, I didn't know the difference between them and the Beatles. They were
Right.
my favorite bands. One of the first records I bought was like the first Kicks record,
Yeah. Yeah.
I chose that over a whole bunch of other more famous groups, but
Mhm.
that's what when you're local and you're proud of them, because that just shows that it's possible to do something from
Mhm.
Baltimore. Now in the end we ended up moving away, but
Right.
we
Right.
put a couple of years in,
Mhm.
and we kind of felt like we had reached the limit of what we could do there, besides just doing more of the same. And
Mhm.
we kind of wanted to test ourselves on the West Coast more, so we ended up moving out there to Arizona, which we thought was going to be a stepping stone to LA. And we did play some gigs out there. We did some showcases. There was a heavy metal convention in 1990 called the Foundations Forum.
Yep.
We played out there, which it's great to say you did it, but doing it wasn't all that great.
Yeah. Right. Right.
We
Right.
were in like we were in a small banquet room at a hotel, and in the middle of this convention, and nothing really came of that, but it was cool that we got to participate. We were in the program and everything. So we also played South by Southwest. Um, we got to participate in some cool things in Phoenix, like we were on a Beatles tribute CD. We did a version of Lady Madonna that was pretty cool.
Great.
Yeah, so we did a few cool things over the years. We went out to like I said, South by Southwest was in Texas. And then we just concentrated on writing and recording a lot, and eventually
Mhm.
we had a couple of deals offered to us. And then the band ended up breaking up in about June of '93.
Mhm.
So we had
Yeah.
been there almost 2 years.
Right. Right. That was yeah, right around the same time frame my band was around too. Orange Seed Parade in those
Mhm.
days. You know, um, Another thing that and we just to talk a little bit more about the unity of the scene that we had. I mean, we
Right.
were competitive, but then we were also happy to hear when somebody else had some good news.
Yeah, I don't remember any. Now, this may just be my experience, and maybe I'm naive, but I don't remember a whole lot of really nasty
Mm-mm.
backbiting going on. I was friends with a lot of dudes in other bands,
Yeah.
and we were all there to support each other, and
Hmm.
we go out to our shows, and they would hang out with us at our house. We
Yeah.
lived in a place that was out in Owings Mills in the
Yeah.
wood. It was 150-year-old house on 10 acres of land in the woods that
Oh wow.
somehow and I was in a band before Psychoboy, and a couple of the guys in that band had rented this house, and we ended up living there as roommates, and then that band ended up breaking up. And long story short, so Psychoboy ended up living in that house. And it's funny you mentioned Mystic Force earlier. I think they played at a backyard party we had there, and this was one of the most poorly conceived events you could imagine. We distributed flyers at Hammer
Hmm.
Jacks. It was totally open to anyone and everyone.
Hmm.
We had no real consideration for parking or lighting. So we had this enormous field, and everyone just put their cars in the field, and it was in the woods, and it was really cool, right? But then it started getting dark.
Hmm.
And so all I could do was run up to the house, because it was at the bottom of this giant hill. The house was at the top of the hill. So I
Hmm.
ran up there. I remember getting just a regular table lamp, and I brought it down and we sat it on someone's car or whatever and plugged this lamp in, and that was the light for the entire gig. Now we had like, because we had like a half a dozen bands playing there.
Mm.
And, it was just ridiculous.
That was fun. Do you remember maybe late 80s? And I was just talking to Scarlet Angel about this. I had them on the show not too long ago. I met them actually. There was a show called The Monsters of Edge Rock, and it was in somebody's backyard in Edgemere, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of going into Fat Albert's Junkyard.
Yeah.
It was like a backyard where they had a stage and everything, but then they had like an old camper back there,
Yeah.
and the hamburgers tasted weird from what I heard. I couldn't. I didn't have
Well,
any
we
money.
didn't have any hamburgers, and that would have been an upgrade. So
Yeah, really.
we just, like I said, we didn't really think everything through very well. But I'm just glad nobody died and we got through it okay. And
Mhm.
I mean, I think we might have had some stuff stolen out of the house. I mean,
Oh
it was-
yeah,
but
that's inevitable whenever
what
you're having.
happens when you have an open party like that. I'm sure there's people listening who know somebody, or that maybe they themselves went to it, because it was a pretty big thing. Certainly
Mhm.
hundreds of people. But when you're 22 years old, you're not really thinking about details as much.
No, you're not.
Let's put a concert on.
Yeah, I know. Well, at least you were. I guess you said 10 acres of land, so I'm guessing you were probably far enough away for any neighbors to give you
Oh
a hard
yeah,
time.
no, there was no neighbors at all. I mean,
Okay.
it was woodland.
Mhm.
There was like a stream and tons of woods and a big backyard. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's what gave us the idea that we could get away with it. So
Mhm. That's the typical field party, typical 80s field party. I'm sure there were plenty of red cups there too, huh?
oh yeah, well, we did manage to pull off the beer. I mean, that's a necessity.
Priorities, Oh,
So
that's great.
that house unfortunately came to an unpleasant end because, again, bad decisions were being made by myself and other people, and we had some people come into our circle that knew the band,
Mhm.
maybe a friend of a friend, and some rather unsavory types were coming around that were
Mhm.
involved in crime, and talking organized crime.
Oh.
And after we moved out, I heard that they had taken over, if not the house, at least the garage, and were doing something in there, which I won't get into. But then the result was the house ended up burning down,
Mm.
suspiciously, and it is no
Oh.
more. But they developed that whole area anyway, so
Mhm.
yeah, it was some pretty crazy stuff going on there.
Oh yeah, and, well, right around that time, Owings Mills was like booming with new development and everything too. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that
It would
any
have gone
large,
eventually, but it was kind of sad to hear that it burned down because
yeah.
it was so old and had a lot of character.
Mhm.
So there's a couple of pictures on the website I think I took, because I went back one year and I took some pictures, and it was just like total devastation. The whole thing just charred up and burned out, except for the
Wow.
back deck, which was made of wood. So go figure. I don't know.
That's great. But yeah, did you ever do you had mentioned like Maxwell's, yeah, there were some cool shows there.
Yeah, I like that place. I know I played there with my previous band, which was called Prophecy.
Mhm.
I think I might have played there with Psychoboy.
Mhm.
I don't imagine we left any stone unturned. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
we played every club in the area if we could all get in there. So
Mhm.
Network, definitely we went to Network. Grog and Tankard was downtown.
Oh yeah, that was a great one too. We played there. Yeah.
Played there a few times. I know there's a lot more. I'm drawing a blank right now, but yeah.
Did you ever
'cause
do Feathers?
I've heard of that place. No, I
Yeah.
never played.
That was a basement. That was over in Moravia Park. That was like the basement of the Red Rooster Inn. It was called Feathers Lounge.
What was the one down at University of Maryland in College Park? You have to go
Paragon?
up the stairs.
Oh
Paragon.
yeah, the
The stairs,
Paragon.
right? The Paragon. Yeah, that was another one we did play there.
Yeah, the Paragon. That one. Those steps. Everybody that whenever I have somebody on the show, we mention the Paragon. Everybody's like, "Oh, the steps."
Oh yeah, it's a great place if you got a 412 cabinet and a Leslie cabinet, and
Yeah.
carry these things that are like a refrigerator up these stairs.
Oh, my big old Ampeg rig. That was. I'll tell you what.
Exactly. Yeah.
That might have been a plan to make sure that none of the band members left drunk, because you cannot hump your equipment up and down those steps and still be drunk.
I don't know how they got insurance in that place, because that thing was like a death trap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. It was. But that was another great place, though.
Sure.
Yeah, I remember that place very fondly, and just a great room. Just a great room. We got booked there in the Rage in the same night, and it snowed. That's a whole story right there, too. We were driving up 295, and we had the van, and it was fishtailing all over the place trying to get to the Rage on time for us to play. And somebody booked us, I said, isn't it supposed to snow? Nah, it's not going to snow. Don't worry about that. It's Maryland. They say it's going to snow, but it never snows, but it snowed.
What?
And yeah.
A lot of snowing going on when I was growing up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. These clubs they're such a classic thing back then, and it was like the last time you would play in Baltimore before you got a chance to play New York or something like that. It was almost like a bon voyage party. You remember that kind of feeling? People would turn out and come to the show to kind of give you well wishes and everything.
Well, we never made it to New York, but we did have those kind of feelings like at some of our gigs right before we moved.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously everybody knew we were leaving, so our friends came out.
Sure. Did you ever do any of the underage places?
No, that didn't sound like a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, they were pretty good. It was kids, it was a younger crowd, obviously, than a nightclub, but there were quite a few of those places popping up too, and they were good shows. They were good gigs back then. And did you ever go into DC?
Trying to remember. I mean, I want to say we must have played somewhere in DC.
Yeah.
I can't recall off the top of my head. I'd have to
Right.
hear some club names to be reminded.
9:30, 15-minute club. Well, Paragon you'd mentioned,
Yeah, that's probably the one in the area that we did play. I don't recall playing us playing at the other ones.
Right. But yeah, there were a lot of neat clubs down there too. And I think too that in a lot of ways, we were more gothic. You had kind of the funk thing going on, but I think the thing with the scene at the time was that we were almost kind of going into a no man's land. The hair thing was really starting to kind of taper off. Seattle hadn't really happened yet.
Yeah.
And it was almost like this void time when I guess people were all trying to come up with what the next thing was. And a lot of, the funk stuff became popular. The darker stuff kind of became popular until it ended up in grunge. But I mean, it was sort of almost like a back to the drawing board kind of time.
Yeah, back then we had no idea that was coming though. I mean, I had no clue.
Mm-hmm.
We just were trying to feel our way through it and figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm. But it was but the funk became popular at the time because that was the time the Chili Peppers kind of started coming into popularity, as well as the bands like Primus and everything. Sure. And I think you guys did it well, I got to tell you.
Yeah, I remember us covering some Chili Peppers.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely remember some of that stuff. Definitely some Living Color. That
Mm-hmm.
was in the cover side. We'd always pick a few songs to throw in there just to kind of represent, that
Mm-hmm.
aspect of what we like. But I think the stuff we were writing was definitely more of a rock edge.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What I do now is more funk. It's more straight funk. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are rock influences, but it's more of a real funk band.
Yep. Did you ever do any of the you remember Rock Live, the TV show?
That does sound familiar. Yeah, I think we might have done one of those.
Yeah, that was on I think it was on late Saturday night. I think it was on God, maybe around, it might have been on like at midnight. So I think it was on like right after whatever station had the Howard Stern show on.
Uh-huh.
And they used to go around and they interviewed a lot of the local bands, and it was a TV interview, a well done show. It's a shame it didn't last that long, but it seems like things in Baltimore sometimes never really do.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was when there was a rock scene. I mean,
mm-hmm. Right.
Stayed the same forever.
Mm-hmm.
Not the same anymore.
Yep. So So the band went through a number of changes over the years. I saw that you had mentioned you started off in '89. You had I'm looking at the band pictures and your bio here on your website as we're talking. First lineup between '89 and '91, four piece. So tell us about that. I know it was
Yeah, that
yeah.
was Jeff Henderson was the vocalist, also played guitar. John Urbanski was the bass player. Sean
Mm-hmm.
Shea was the drummer, and I was on guitar.
Yep.
So that was a very aggressive kind of band. We did a lot of the funk stuff, a lot of the Chili Peppers influence sounds, and we had a crazy sense of humor. So that kind of found its way into a lot of the shows.
Mhm.
Sean, our drummer, would get up and rap. I mean, we pulled out all kinds of stuff just to make it an interesting, set. So we had some unexpected things going on in there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, a great lineup too. I mean, I can remember you, and I know, Sean and John are definitely a great rhythm section, and I believe went on to Peking Opera after the move to Arizona
That's right.
occurred.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, so the next one occurred. It looks like it's, I get, of course, you and Jeff again, and Bo and RJ joined the band. Tell us about those guys.
Yeah. So Jeff and I basically had decided that we needed to move
Mm-hmm.
to kind of force the next thing that was going to happen for the band, whatever that was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the year and a half, 2 years or whatever it was that we were in Maryland, we didn't really see a way to break through and get to that next level, or so we
Mhm.
thought. I mean, maybe obviously other bands had made it from there, but we just didn't really see that happening for us. So we thought we needed to be out on the West Coast, and John and Sean were not really feeling that, and unfortunately, that caused them to basically bail out of the band at the time. So before we moved, Jeff and I found RJ and Bo, um, and they were willing to make that move. They were at a place in their lives where they were willing to pick everything up and just head out. So we got some rehearsing in, learned all the music, and then we moved in like September of '91, I think. We had just done another demo tape a couple months before that, so we had a lot of music in the can, and then we recorded a ton more when we moved out here. So I mean, I think in the time we were together, we probably did about 3 albums worth of songs, but that we would just constantly issue those as little demo tapes and repackage them. So we 4 songs on this one, 6 songs on that one, 10 songs on. I mean, and I guess I didn't have any idea, but I guess those kind of tapes are collectible now. Apparently,
Oh yeah.
not just us, but everybody. 80s and 90s bands, it's like a thing. But yeah, back then we were just always, at Kinko's, printing stuff, designing things, making flyers. You know how it was. So we would go in the studio every few months, crank out some more songs. And when we were recording them, we didn't look at it as we were making a demo. We made it. It was like, okay, it's time to record. We're going to do it for real. It's like an album. This is what we do. And I know we all took it seriously at the time. So it wasn't like a throwaway thing for us. That's why I feel good about putting the music out now, because, we did invest a lot of work into it, at the time.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And to get back about the one thing you say, and I talk about this all the time on the show, we kind of reminisce with, the folks that were around when we were. There was no social media back then. There was no email back then. There was no pinning things on your page. You had to get out, and you wanted to play a show. You damn well had better been out there putting up flyers.
It was all about the flyering. It was that was the sucky part of the whole thing. You had to print up all the flyers, waste a whole bunch of paper, and then go slather them all over town and put it in people's hands and make a nuisance of yourself.
Yep, I know.
So,
I know that, and that was the thing. And I took some time off. After Orange Seed broke up, I took some time off to kind of, be able to be employable, and and I came back to playing, I guess, about 10 years after that, and it was almost like Rip Van Winkle, because I had a new band. We went out, started playing shows, So, we booked a show. What do? I went out, I made some flyers, and I went in and started handing them out. And people looked at me like I had four heads. Like, what the hell is this? I said, well, it's my band. We're playing here. Like, well, what do you want me to do with this? And I said, well, read it. It's, and they acted like I was handing them, I don't know, like I picked up a dead animal off the street and I was handing it to them. Like, what do I do with this? Well, maybe read it and come, is it, am I weird? I don't know.
I remember we went out to the Sunset Strip one year, soon after we got here. Actually, we went there a couple of times during the course of the band's life, but it was chaotic and it was just flyers everywhere. Every long-haired dude in the world was there pressing a flyer into your hands, pleading with you to go to a show. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that all just dried up overnight, when things changed. But they had a run there probably of about 10 years.
Yeah, I would say too. Well, and the thing is, out there too, there were so many of those pay to play clubs. I mean, they had to. I mean, they were forking out money to get that show, and they had to make it up.
Yep. So a lot of the bands had, millionaire financial backers that would,
Yeah,
they would put them up if they believed in them, and they would let them live the Playboy lifestyle. You could see some of that stuff in that movie that Spears did, Decline of Western Civilization Part 2.
Yes.
Always a classic. Yeah, I mean, that whole thing would have been a disaster. I'm glad we didn't move out there. It would have just been screaming into the abyss. Hey, look at me. I mean, there's just so many bands were trying to make it, and they didn't let go of the hair metal thing until it was too late.
Yeah.
That's when they got superseded.
You're right about that. And I've had a number of people on the show that told me that that they were good bands in that genre, though. And the thing was that it was almost like you had just mentioned, they got signed too late. They got the record deal. It was a great record, but then the record company like kind of pulled the rug out from under them, because all of a sudden here comes Nirvana, or the next phase of music or the next fad, came in. A number of bands that really happened to that I've had as guests, they were telling me about that, and but then again, that went away, and it seems like a lot of people kind of went back to. I guess we just needed a break from each other, as they say sometimes, and kind of it kind of became popular again, and these bands are out playing and doing what I call the senior circuit,
Well, I think the public has gotten used to all of their favorite bands looking older now. I mean,
yeah.
Rolling Stones have kind of blazed the path for that. So when Mick's up there at 80 years old, the rest of us don't look so old anymore. I mean, we can get out there in our 50s or whatever. And
yeah, exactly.
If you still have the love for it and you have the energy, like I do, I mean, it's not something you want to stop, because making music feels good. And I put it away for a little while. I had a music store for a while, and I was running that, and I was playing in cover bands, which I still play for fun. I play around town. I play for money. But I mean, my original band is really what I have the most passion for, because I get to write and record new music, and nobody needs to know that the band is older. We just put it out there with everybody else, and it's online.
Oh yeah, absolutely right. That's absolutely right. But the one thing I've noticed too about going to concerts and seeing all my favorite bands from back in the day, years ago, we'd want to go see a band, we'd go to Network or Hammerjacks. Doors would open at 8, we'd be standing around until 11:30 waiting for the band to come on, and we'd be rolling out of there, 10 of 2. They finally kick us all out, Nowadays, the show starts at 8:00, you're home by 11:30. And we're not standing around that long. Back then, we needed a couple of days to recover because we drank a lot. Nowadays, we need a little time to, a couple of days to recover because we've been standing.
And, the back pain.
Oh God! and then we're in bed by 11:30. Because the guys in the band are even older than us, and they have to be in bed. But it's still happening. What can you ask for more?
No, I think that for those of us who grew up listening to rock and roll in whatever form that you like it, whatever you want to call it, that music is just irreplaceable, and
it is
nothing really replacing it right now. I mean, it's frozen in time. And, we all know the songs, they're immortalized forever.
Mhm.
And that's never going to go away. As far as new stuff coming up, there's a handful of new groups that I enjoy, but for the most
Yes.
part, you know, we always have the Allman Brothers and Queen and Led Zeppelin,
Oh,
Aerosmith.
sure, sure.
The greats are always there for us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the thing, working for, a radio station now, there are some good bands out there too, that are up and coming and everything. And I tell people, there are a lot of people in our age group that are just closed off to it. They haven't even made an attempt to hear it yet. But I've been playing for a lot of them and kind of turning people onto it,
Well, that's your job, right?
Yeah,
You're on the
hey.
radio, so take it up. Tell the
It's-
people.
It is. It's one of my jobs, and having them on, talking to them and getting the word out about them. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and I'm really enjoying, getting to hear these bands and getting to know them on the station and everything. It's really a great experience here. So when you get out to Arizona, there was another lineup change. You know, you had Bo and RJ, and
Yeah. So Bo left the band maybe in the fall of
Mhm.
'92. After we'd been there for about a year, and then we brought in a fellow from Vegas named Jack Roth, and he was a perfect fit. Still friends to this day. So our lineup it did change, but this is just sometimes what happens, and it's either musical or personality or whatever. But I mean, everybody that was in that group, I still have really good feelings about. I mean, I don't get to
Mhm.
see all of them, but it was a definite special time for everybody.
Mhm.
And then after Jack joined the group, my brother joined soon after that. And then we continued on through the spring, traveled a little bit, played some gigs, did more recordings. But by that point, we were recording. We had our own home studio. It wasn't like elaborate, but
Mhm.
well, a lot of what we recorded at the end came out of there, and it sounds great. So I guess it's just a matter of who was mixing it. We had a producer at the time named Russ Graves,
Mhm.
who had worked with George Lynch before we got there.
Yeah.
And then he took a shine to us, and then he became our producer for a couple of years. And he produced a bunch of our demos, and then he mixed our final stuff. And I think he did a great job.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the stuff's sounding good. I've been listening to what you've posted and everything. I mean, it sounds great, So it was great. You had your brother in the band, and it really added something else. You're bringing a keyboard player and making it a 5-piece band now, which
Yeah.
is something that you hadn't had before.
Yeah, that's right. It suddenly we had a lot more freedom, not only to create interesting parts and lay things out on recordings, but live we could duplicate it because
Mhm.
now we had an extra guy who was there to, you know, cover all the extra harmonies and the
Mhm.
parts. And he played guitar too. So if we needed, 2 or 3 guitars, even, we had that. If we needed 2 guitars or 1 guitar and a keyboard, he was there for that. So it was really, unfortunately, very short lived because he was only in the group for maybe, I want to say, 6 or 7 months. But
Mhm.
that was probably my favorite time of the band, just because of how good everything was starting to come together.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a shame when those things come to an end. All that hard work and everything, and
Yeah.
you know, um, yeah, yeah. I had been thinking about that a bit too. One of the episodes on this show, I did, just a solo, no guest. It was just me, and I was talking about Orange Seed Parade because one of my old bandmates uncovered an interview of us actually being interviewed on 97 Underground.
Mm.
So I played the interview and I just did a thing about the band history and everything. And we broke up and it didn't end well. I don't know exactly what the terms were with with Psychoboy, but we didn't end well. And I'm looking back, I'm just thinking, if we had like more of an older mindset, if we weren't
Yeah.
23 and flying off the handle and everything, things probably would have worked out,
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to look back and say, well, if only we had done this or tried that, but
right.
things just happened the way they did, and we all had to move on. I think we were all kind of in a state of limbo after that, trying to figure out, because when you're in a band, you're in a bubble. It's like being in a frat. You're
Right.
living together with all your bros, and basically don't have any real life concerns. You're not worried about a career. You're not worried about bills or relationships as much, because you're living for the band, and that is an artificial environment that doesn't last forever. And then when it's gone, you suddenly find yourself like drifting, like, okay, well, now what? I'm in my mid-20s. I don't have a degree. I didn't finish college. So it's like, you got to figure out what to do, and what's going to give your life meaning at that point. So I just continued on for years. I was a guitar instructor. I'd always been a guitar instructor since I was like 19. So I just kept doing that. I was in a little store, and I recorded an album with some friends and my brother. I did my own album in like 90, 95, 96. And then I ended up moving back to Baltimore for a couple years. I moved back to Baltimore for a couple years, and then moved back here again, the end of 98. And that's when things started to kind of coalesce for me personally. I'd gotten married, and then I opened up a music store. I started the band that I'm in now back in 2001. And I didn't stay in that band back when I, first started it with my friend, but I came back to it. We restarted it again. That was the band that I did get back together again. By the way, that band's called Calumet. That's my funk band.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had a music store for a number of years, and I played music, and it was cool, but it wasn't like my passion until we restarted Calumet, and then I was able to write and record again, and that's really what I'm into right now.
That's yeah. Kind of the same situation with me too. I was, in my mid-20s, hadn't finished school yet. Went back and did that, because I had to make myself employable, and get something established, because I realized that, with all this time and effort, I made no money. And I really wanted to, make it so I could, have things, and like food and shelter and water, and do
Little
much.
thing.
Yeah, the bare essentials there. So
Right.
I kind of moved on at that time myself and started working on that. And the thing was too, again, looking at my mindset at the time, 23, 24 years old, I was like, oh my God, I'm getting old. I got to do something. I'm getting too old for the no, and looking back now, it's like nonsense. I mean, you do need to get something under your belt, but you plenty of life.
Yeah. Well, I think once you've had music as the dominant force in your life, the creativity, if you're in it for the reasons that we all aspire to, as far as creating something that's worth listening to, at least, you hate to lose that, because that is the spark that makes you feel young, and it gives you a passion and a drive. Even if you take away the whole, like, oh, let's try to make it, let's be rock stars and all that jazz. What's left is the joy of creating something, and then recording it, and then hearing it, and then putting it out for people to listen to. And that never gets old for me. I live for that. That's the best thing.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. So, just getting back to your brother, after Psychoboy, he ended up with a pretty nice gig, huh?
Yeah. So he signed on with the Michael Schenker group. Michael at the time was living here in Phoenix, and he was actually living not far, like right up the street from my music store. I had a music store where I was teaching, and usual stuff. We sold guitars and whatnot. My brother was teaching there too. He was teaching keyboards, and a friend of ours was Michael's guitar tech. So he told Michael about my brother, because Michael needed a guy that was going to fill that Paul Raymond role. If you know UFO, he's the guy, man. So UFO was one of my favorite bands when I was a kid growing up, learning how to play guitar. And Michael Schenker was truly like my favorite guitar player for years. I spent a lot of time. So I spent a lot of time, learning his music and solos, and that helped shape me as a player. So it was incredibly ironic and amazing that my brother got to play with him. Because
oh yeah,
whoever thinks that's going to happen? I mean, that's totally out of the blue. So he played with him for a couple years. He did a tour, a number of tours in Europe and Japan. They recorded a live concert. It's on YouTube, so you can look it up. It's like the 25th anniversary tour from my. So yeah, he did that for a while, and let's just say that things didn't end very well on that end of it either for him, because Michael is a little bit of a flaky individual who is prone to leaving his band like at times, and they can be stranded on the road, and that happened. So at the time, Michael had a killer band. He had, I'm sure you know, David Van Landing from Mannequin and other groups. So David was in the group, and it's funny because David lived in Arizona, and that's how he got in the band too. And when we first got out here, I took a couple vocal lessons with him, and his wife cut my hair. I mean, it was like the little clique of people that just transports from one town to another. It's the people that or you're familiar with. So anyway, David was in the group, and he had Barry Sparks and Shane Galas, who were probably best known as Yngwie Malmsteen's rhythm section. Just incredible virtuoso bass and drums. I mean, they're like the best guys if you were going to put a metal band together. So we had those guys, and I remember I had to pick my brother up in Glen Burnie because they got stranded somewhere in Pennsylvania and had to take a bus down. I forgot what happened. Michael flew back to Phoenix. He was tired of the tour or whatever, and just kind of left them. At least that's what I remember him telling me. So I remember going home to my mom's house, and I think Shane or Barry or both were there, and they had a bag of shrimp or something weird was going on. But yeah, they were all a little put out by being left that way.
I can imagine. I mean, I'd heard some things about that over the years, like just some weirdness and that kind of stuff happening, which is a real shame, because I mean, he's had, of course, the Scorpions UFO, and a number of the other things he's done. His own solo stuff is just great, and
he is the top of the mountain for me in so many ways. But I've read a lot about him and watched a lot of videos about his life, and he was a mess. I mean, the dude, he did so many things. It's amazing he got one chance after another. But it's not really for me to judge, because I don't know him personally like that. But just from what I've seen, there was a lot of stuff. You don't have to listen to me. You can go look it up. I mean, he did some crazy stuff. Much crazier than just leaving his band. I mean, I don't need to get into it.
Right, exactly.
At that point, I think that kind of burned my brother out. At that point, he could have continued on to try to have a career in that world, but he didn't. He kind of came back here to Phoenix and basically became a local working musician. He was happy doing that for a while. Played in bars like the rest of us.
It's great that he had that experience. I mean, because you had mentioned,
absolutely.
I think that he went overseas with them too, maybe to Japan. Did you say?
He did, and in Europe, he got to play on the G3 tour. So he was on stage with, Brian May came out, and obviously Satriani and Uli Roth, who's another one of my all-time guitar heroes. He was talking about and Uli gave him a guitar lesson in the green room. I mean, he was telling about all these incredible experiences he had. So it was really nice to hear all that stuff. He packed a lot into a couple of years, and then they came back, and he did an album. Do you know who Mike Varney is?
Yes,
he's a producer of he had a label called Shrapnel. So, and that was like a label where virtuoso musicians, mainly guitar players, would get a deal and they would put albums out. So Michael did an album in like '99 that my brother was on, and there's footage of him in the studio doing that too. So I mean, it's really cool to look back and see all that stuff, because even though that didn't happen for me, I'm just really happy it happened for him, because that must have been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be. I mean, he's top of the line. It's just a shame that all that happened with the band and everything. I mean,
it didn't just happen with that lineup. Believe me, over the years.
Oh yeah.
So many musicians have a similar story or worse. I mean,
well, the thing is, it's like I'd look in Hit Parader magazine or whatever, and that the new album by Schenker, or whatever. There was always a completely different lineup, like every 4 months or something. It was,
Yeah, it happened a lot.
you
You know,
know?
it's funny now because he's been on the road for, I mean, he's never gone off the road really, as far as I can see.
Mhm.
And a lot of the in recent years, he goes out with a whole lineup of his previous lead singers. Like he'll have Macaulay
Yep.
and
Mhm.
Graham Bonnet,
Yep.
and obviously Gary Barden
Yep.
from the first Michael Schenker group. So I mean, he obviously values these guys. So
Mhm.
he'll have all of them. He'll have like 3 or 4 lead singers come out, and
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, he's making great music, and it's great to see him. It just must be a little tough to be one of his musicians in his band.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's like him, and I'm sure, and I've heard a lot of people talking about, working with Richie Blackmore too. It's just a real that's just, you're dealing
Yeah,
with
yeah,
a
I've seen that.
personality like that,
Yeah.
it's a great experience. It's a like, it sounds like it was great to play with Michael Schenker, except for Michael Schenker, It's
You know what? I think it's kind of like you kind of serve at their pleasure, and when they're not
yeah,
pleased with you anymore, you're gone. they just
right.
they just move on, and they're the ones who are the superstars.
Hmm.
They're famous people, so they don't have to keep you around if they don't want to.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just like television too. I mean, you see how characters get killed and written off of shows all the time. It's kind of the same thing, I guess. But I
But
guess.
there is a lot to be said for having a stable lineup for a amount of time because your
Oh yeah.
music is everybody settles in and can play the music
Hmm.
better, and having a lot of upheaval in your lineup, which is something I'm unfortunately
Hmm.
very well acquainted with. um you're always starting back again. You're always
It
having
is.
to get
Yeah.
somebody up to speed. You're starting to square one, or
Hmm.
you just never feel like you're able to maintain
Hmm.
highest level you're trying for.
I know. I know. And it seems like then you have to go through all those auditions, and
Yeah. And then there's
then
times when you can't find the people you want,
I
right?
know.
Nobody's around. You don't have a guy in your band or a girl or whatever for however long
Hmm.
because there's nobody around. You don't know where to look anymore. So, yeah.
Or you pick the wrong one. Oh, gee, yeah. I mean, luckily, we were able that, and I know what it was like auditioning people for bands I was in, and I'm like, man, we had some doozies.
Oh my
Um,
God. Yeah. Yeah. Because remember, we lost our rhythm section, right? Because they
mhm,
weren't going to make the trip. So we had to go through all that in just a few months before leaving. So we had to find somebody not only who was a good player, but who was willing to move across the
mhm,
country.
yeah,
So we definitely had some people out to the house that couldn't really play very well, and it's very uncomfortable if you
mhm,
don't hold your auditions the right way. You end up being stuck, for an
mhm,
afternoon with somebody, and you don't really have the heart to tell them that they can't be in the band because they
mhm,
drove like an hour to get to you or whatever. So
mhm.
yeah, it's a tough process, and I don't like going through that.
Yeah, I didn't like it either, and well, the thing was too was that there's so many parallels between the acting world and the music world. Some things are different, some things are the same, but the one thing that you learn in acting is that you go, you audition, and then you leave. Don't call us, we'll call you.
Right.
Some guys in bands, it's just like, oh my God, you played the songs, thank you, bye. You know,
Yeah.
we'll call
They,
you,
they want to
or
they want to jump right to the hanging out part, which
yeah,
can't really do that unless once
yeah,
you're in the band, absolutely hang
hmm,
out. We're brothers now, but until you're in the band, nah,
yeah,
we can't.
yeah, that's just exactly. And oh man, we had one guy come down to our guitar player's high school graduation party was that day. All right, so what we were going to do is, have him come in and audition real quick and then leave, and then they were having the party. Well, the guy didn't leave, and he wouldn't leave, and he just sat there and he passed out drunk. and and the thing was too, it was and without getting into it, he passed out drunk. He was passed out on the deck, in a lounge chair. His girlfriend's trying to wake him up, to get him to go home and everything. And I was just like, good Lord. And he's like, then he wakes up, he's like, all right, man, when's practice? And we're like, no practice. Goodbye.
That's a good way to make a first impression. Huh?
Oh, I know. Yeah. So that's the way it is. So, well, great. Well, look, it's been a pleasure catching up with you and everything, talking about the old days and hearing about, what you're doing now and, seeing that you're putting your material out. That's just great to see. A lot of
Yeah,
people are
I'm
doing that.
really I'm really excited about it. Anybody that wants to check it out can go to our website, which is psychoboy8993.com.
Great, great. And you have music on here, you have bio, you have a boatload of band pictures and friend pictures, from people that you hung around with and hung
Oh
around the
yeah,
band. And
lots of good
um,
times.
lots of good times. Just a nice trip down memory lane. If you were a Psycho Boy fan back then, this is a great site. I really think you're going to enjoy it. So, so again, thank you so much for joining us
Oh, my
today.
pleasure. And if I could just say one thing,
Sure.
we had a lot of friends in the scene back then. Any people that are listening or watching this, feel free to reach out, go to the website, get a hold of me. I'd love to talk to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, folks. We've had Jason Mitchell here tonight from Psycho Boy, and again, I really enjoyed catching up with you. It was great to run into you on, I think it was a Facebook page. We ran into each other, and go to their website, listen to their music and everything. And they're going to be releasing it little by little, so plenty of time to hear it and everything. So thanks again, and thank you all for listening tonight, folks. We've had Jason Mitchell here from Psycho Boy, and we will see you all next time on Foul Players Radio. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Folks, thanks again for sticking around and listening to our interview with Jason Mitchell. It was great to catch up with him. Reminiscing about the Baltimore band scene from years ago. His band Psycho Boy. We played a lot of the same clubs, and I really enjoyed this, little trip down memory lane, as I hope many of you did too. They are re-releasing all of their Psycho Boy material from 89 to 93. And all the links to where you can find that material are in the show notes. So go ahead and click on it there. The main website is psychoboy8993.com. Remember, the Foul Players of Perryville are back in action, and we have shows on the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, Fifth Company Brewing, Susky River Beverage Company, and Maryland Party Boat. Our website is foulplayersofperryville.com, and you can book us at foulplayersperryville@yahoo.com or 443-600-0446. Remember to catch me every Tuesday, 97 Underground from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern for the Back of the Rack, the Michael Spedden Show on 97underground.com, where we feature songs you forgot you liked, classics that never die, interviews with up-and-coming beloved bands. And go to 97underground.com and download the free app today and listen wherever you go. And don't forget, my interviews are all archived on YouTube at 97 Underground Michael Spedden. Thanks again for watching and listening. We really appreciate you tuning in. Please support our guests in their endeavors. And remember, foulplayersradio.com, youtube.com/@foulplayersradio. And remember, you can help me a great deal by hitting that like and subscribe button and giving us an honest review. Until next time, this is Michael Spedden signing off.